We're just going to take our seat. And we'll start always by getting just a little attention to our posture. We want to feel grounded. We want to feel upright and alert. We want length in our neck, so that might mean that your chin comes down a little bit and back a little bit without constricting the throat. We want to feel relaxation. And the whole meditation could be just focusing on this series of postural adjustments. It's totally fine kind of meditation. And over time, first, we're not asking for a perfect posture. I mean, you can do that, but then that's all your meditation might be about, because at first it's not comfortable for us to have even a good posture. So it takes time, but we want to move in that direction. I still don't have a perfect sitting posture after all these years, because it's not the most important part. And today we're going to focus on our breath. I would invite you to find a part of your breath that already is a resource, so we can continue with a kind of resource meditation. But it's okay if it's not incredibly resourceful, or if you want to move around a little bit in the breath. In order to touch into acceptance, the first thing we're going to apply to our breath is an experience of waiting for the breath. So when we breathe out, I want you to experience waiting for the breath to come in. We naturally breathe out, and now the breath will naturally come in. You just wait. And this is a practice of letting go of control of that breath. And then the breath breathes in all by itself. How long does it breathe in? You wait and see. When does the breath stop on the way in? You don't know. You wait and see. And then you wait for it to breathe out again. Our habit of control and struggle is so ingrained in us that it's very hard for most of us to focus on the breath without controlling the breath. This is a very basic, almost physical way of practicing acceptance with the breath. It's one reason breath is such a great beginning meditation. Because you will see I keep interfering with my breath. Don't get frustrated. Just let go of that. Just see, can I find a sense for a moment of the breath breathing itself? I'm not the one breathing it. All day long, I go around doing things. I'm not focused on the breath. It does a fine job. But now I turn my attention to it, and because my attention is so addicted to controlling, I can't help but start to interfere with the breath. This is a beautiful way to get an insight to how our mind works, and eventually to get a taste of what it's like to not interfere. Okay, so that's the first element. The second element is let's start with the nostrils and mouth and back of the head area. As we breathe in, we'll feel air in the nostrils, we'll feel it in the sinuses, we'll feel it in the back of the throat or mouth area. And now we're going to practice all those levels of acceptance on just this experience. So we are concentrating on our breath in this area in our body. So the first way of thinking about it is we're just trying to experience it as it is. Now, one thing that your mind will immediately do is think of it as my breath is the air goes in my nostrils and then it goes in my sinuses and then it goes to the mouth. But pay close attention. You'll notice that the breath starts to happen in the throat at the same time that it happens in the nostrils. That's an idea of how the breath works, but the breathing process is happening harmoniously and simultaneously in a big portion of the body. We want to see it as it is, letting go of our idea of what the breath is. And we talked about this last week, but the most direct path to getting underneath our memory, getting away from our memory of things and getting into beginner's mind is to focus on our sensory experience, the very details of the sensory experience. So just as a scientist wants to actually measure the photons hitting the screen rather than try and guess what he's seeing or she's seeing, we want to just actually measure the sensations we're experiencing. There might be coolness or heat in the nostrils. Is the in-breath colder or the out-breath? That's a question you can only answer by looking. So sensations like cold and hot, shape, pressure, flow, tingling, vibration. You also might, especially if you get in the throat area, in the mouth area, might feel something that has an emotional quality, but even that will be heat or pressure or shape. Pain is a sensation. Pleasure can be considered a sensation. Itchiness, tingling. It's the it's a kind of cheat code for getting to acceptance because it allows you to get underneath your mind and go underneath a lot of your mind, a lot underneath the storytelling mind, underneath the theories, and get down to just the mind that understands sensory experience. I'm waiting for the breath to come in the throat, in the mouth, in the sinuses, in the nostrils. I'm waiting for it to go out, and I'm tuning into it, not with my ideas, but by sensing it directly. And if you are doing this on your own, you would label feel as you feel your breath. Feel, feel. And when you say feel, what do you actually feel sensorially? Now, so there's a little bit of effort to concentrate, a little bit of effort to stay with the senses, and then we're letting go of every other effort to just accept what we're experiencing. If we really start to taste that experience of waiting for the breath to come in and out, if we really start to taste the experience of no longer thinking about the breath, but just experiencing it, you'll start to notice that there's a kind of ease and relaxation that enters the body, maybe just a taste. But we put so much effort into our struggle to figure things out, to control things, that when we take some energy out of it, we start to get a sense of ease. That's not the goal, but you'll notice that whenever you can notice resource in your meditation, it's useful to taste it so that you get that constant feedback loop that will help you sort of stay focused even more deeply. When we do this, we might find that the breath doesn't do what we think it's going to do. We might find that, oh, it just stopped. I just stopped breathing for 15 seconds. That's weird. Or we might find that we're breathing really fast and then suddenly we're breathing slow. We're not in control anymore. The breath can work out whatever kinks it needs to work out. We're just going to add the throat, the full throat, all the way down to the sternum into this awareness. So we're widening our awareness a little bit. You could also just focus on just the throat. And as we get in here, we may start finding more emotion, more resistance. It's another way of putting it. Resistance coming up. My Taoist teacher would say, we'll notice intentions in our throat. That's sort of what emotions are, or desires. They're intentions, they're desired, they're an intention to act. But we are giving just attention to this experience. So we let go of these intentions and we just experience them. It's part of our breathing experience is this feeling of emotion or pain in our throat. Emotional intensity or woundedness or tightness. We're not trying to fix it or get rid of it. We wait for the breath to come in and we wait for the breath to go out and we experience it in our body. An important thing to note here is we are not experiencing air traveling through our body. We are experiencing our muscles and skin and nerves. That's what we're experiencing. It's our actual body expanding and contracting. This is the formal practice of meditation. We sit, we choose an object of focus. We then bring our attention to that object of focus and we notice when our mind wanders. That could be a big part of what we have to work on at first. But when we finally are focused on the thing, we want to see it as it is, in its sensory detail, letting go of resistance and clinging and control. Yeah, if you've noticed any emotion in your throat, you can start to see why this practice is much deeper than just focusing on breath. Because we're now starting to practice acceptance. And even though it's just acceptance of breath, we'll see that everything is interrelated to everything else. So as we really fully start to experience our breath, we will eventually experience our whole psychological, emotional being. And so as we really start to learn to accept our breath, we are beginning the first steps of accepting our whole nature. And we practice stillness as much as possible. That's not the right way to live one's life, the still part. The acceptance part is, but not the still part. But that's part of the practice because it's how we start to learn acceptance. Because if we move and adjust every time we want to, then we are getting lost inside our non-acceptance. Every time we stay still and allow the urge to move to arise and pass away, we are letting go of a little bit of resistance. I remember one of my partners when they would meditate, in retreat, sometimes I'd look over and there'd just be tears and snot running down their face and they weren't moving at all. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that. That's an example of the stillness that can allow a whole bunch of stuff to move through if you really allow the stillness to not fight these feelings as they come up. First, it's just the breath. And we move into the chest area now. So we're going to notice the chest, the heart, the breast area, all the way around the rib cage, all the way around to the back of the spine. Breath comes in and the breath goes out. We wait for the breath to come into the chest. Don't prejudge where it's going to come from. There are natural patterns to the breath, but sometimes our breath begins in the belly, sometimes it begins in the chest, sometimes it begins elsewhere. The front of the chest is a place of a lot of emotional history. It may feel numb, it might feel painful, it might feel stuck, it might feel open and loving, it might feel very emotional. But we're not focused on the emotions, we're just focused on the experience of breath coming in and out, and we're accepting everything else. We're accepting that breath and everything else in our experience. All we are controlling is one thing, our concentration. Our attention is going to stay interested in and curious in the sensory experience in the chest. Feel, feel. Now, numbness is a feeling you might have here, and numbness is a little harder to focus on because there's less sensation to attach to, but it's still a feeling. Pain is the thing that might come up, and that's hard to focus on because we don't like focusing on it. So you always can build resource into this, right? If you're finding too much resistance to your experience, see if you can't find part of your breath that's a little more pleasant, a little more peaceful, so you can make it easier to stay in the experience of what's actually happening. Feel. Let's go through all the aspects of the breath, of acceptance of the breath. As we move into the belly region, I'm going to go from the perineum, the very base of our torso, all the way up to the solar plexus and the belly in between. We just feel the breath come in and out. And we wait for it to come in. We wait for it to go out. We experience it in its sensory details. So, what are all the things that acceptance is? We want to see this experience as it is. See here might get in the way because we're not actually looking with our eyes, right? So, we want to feel this experience as it is. So, part of letting go, right, is not trying to figure out or understand or think about the experience, but to actually experience it. So if your eyes are closed and you're focused on a picture of your belly, well, then you're focused on your thoughts about the belly. You're not actually experiencing the direct experience of the breath. Now, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. That might be the best you can do at first because we're so addicted to thinking about what we're doing. You don't try to get rid of those thoughts. You just see if you can't bring your concentration down into the belly and actually feel the sensations. Where is there more pressure? Where is there less pressure in the breath? Where is there more heat or coolness? Where is there a boundary to the breath? Where is there contraction or expansion? When you actually feel that, even if you still have a picture in your mind, then you have brought your attention into the actual sensory experience. So we want to feel it as it is, letting go of figuring it out or thinking about it. Letting go of does not mean getting rid of. Letting go of means we are not getting lost in the thoughts. We are putting our attention back into the present moment experience, beginner's mind. What if I knew nothing about what the breath was like and all I had were these feelings? What is that experience like? Moment by moment, drip by drip. And the concentration is that honey-like drip of concentration over moment by moment by moment, catching everything. That's the concentration. The acceptance is letting go of anything that isn't the sensation. All the way down to that basic momentary plus minus. Letting go of any judgment of whether it's a good breath or a bad breath, any idea that you need to fix it or make it better or figure it out. But even letting go of controlling any emotional reaction you might have inside the belly, inside the breath, but all the way down. And you may never notice this in today, but you will notice it eventually if you keep practicing. All the way down to the initial plus minus, you start to feel a heat or a pressure, and right afterwards, there's a plus minus that comes on board, whether you like it or don't. You just become awake to that. Eventually, if you keep using your concentration to come back just to the sensation, you'll be able to tease out the sensation from the plus minus and have an experience of the pure sensation before mind, before judgment, before plus minus. A direct experience of your breath. But at that point, the word breath is way far away from reality. It'll be a thing that has no name. That's what acceptance leads you to. The thing in itself, life in itself, pure experience in itself, your true self in itself. Okay, so for these last 5 minutes here, you can continue practicing anything that's useful to you, but we're just going to slowly, if you want to follow along, just ease off the gas pedal. This will be another one of the foundational meditations we'll do at some point, but right now you can get a taste of it. Pure acceptance is a kind of non-doing, right? A true non-interference with your experience. And so just keep letting go of more and more effort. At first, you can sort of stay focused on the breath, but you might find there's a point where you just stop controlling even what you're focused on. And all you're doing is letting go of all non-interference, all attempt to control in your life. To put it back in the terms I began with, you practice fully accepting this moment as it is. It's already here, this moment. There's nothing you can do to get rid of this moment. It's already here. It can't get better or worse in this moment. So what would it be like to just accept that? What comes up as you let go of control? A lot of insight can be achieved by realizing what parts of yourself arise when you start letting go of the steering wheel. The parts that arise are going to be the parts that are most insistent on control right now. That's probably going to be the parts that are the scaredest, or most, it could be anger or it could be other emotions, but at the core of it, will be a sense of insecurity. You don't have to figure that out or solve that, but this is what we learn by accepting the present moment, is we start to get familiar with those parts of us that aren't ready to accept yet. And we'll have to learn to accept and love those parts, not trying to get rid of them, not trying to get rid of anything. The question is, can we stay awake? Can we see all the way back to the beginning, see our experience as it is, experience our experience as it is, sense our experience as it is? And that includes everything. There's no part of it that's not included. So, all of our thoughts and feelings, all of the world outside our body, and all of our experience inside our body, everything we see, hear, and feel, everything about ourself, practicing acceptance. And what does that mean? It means all the things we've talked about. Practicing first and foremost just to see our whole experience as it is. But this goes all the way down to a form of love for ourselves. Because at its core, love is the acceptance of the thing we love. And if we're trying to fix or figure out the thing we love, we are, or trying to improve it or get rid of parts of it, then we aren't fully loving it. And so, this practice of acceptance is a practice of love. And the practice of meditation is a practice of self love. The practice of seeing what's actually here and letting go of control is a practice of loving yourself. All right, for 30 seconds, just truly let go of any doing. We can call this just sitting. So we just sit here. Hmm. Okay. And always you want a soft and gentle transition out of your meditation, because what we're practicing on the cushion is a way of practicing how to be in our life. There is no actual distinction between sitting and not sitting. It's just a place that we have created to practice it. So, can we let that practice start to bleed into the rest of our life? We let go of the stillness part of the formal meditation, and we let our body start to move. And you can do that again with acceptance, letting your body move how it wants to move, letting it move slow or fast, letting it stretch, letting it not stretch, letting yourself curl up on the floor and cry. You could do a lot of different things and slowly move into the rest of your day. And notice throughout the rest of the day, anytime that your perception has changed a little bit. Every time you do that, you deepen your practice, because the practice is not about just being on the cushion. Okay, so that's all for the sit today. Come back next week for meditation number 3 in the 10 foundational meditations.